I saw you on.
Yeah, you probably wish you didn't.
Is that why you were so tired on Saturday?
No, this was Saturday night.
Oh, Saturday night.
Yeah. I was just looking something up and now I forgot what it was.
Agenda.
Oh, thank you.
Karen, if you'd like to sit up with us, you're more than welcome.
Oh, thank you, I'm good.
Step down.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, you can sit up here if you'd like.
Okay, so Veterans Commission is first.
Didn't know I just told you.
Just let me start. How are you?
This one should be a little less long than the last one.
I don't know. We'll see.
And the next one's there.
Six.
We have another one tomorrow night. At 5:30 again.
Hey, Adam.
Where's the last one?
Wednesday.
It's Tuesday.
Today's Monday. At least I hope it's Monday.
You're right, we have another one tomorrow night and then on Thursday.
And Wednesday's Board of Finance.
Yeah.
This is a week not to see family or friends. Well, certainly to see friends. but-
Hi.
All right, it's 5:30. I'm going to call the Selectmen's Budget Workshop to order. 4 of the 5 of us are here. I'm expecting Selectman Baker, but he's not here quite yet. I'm also expecting the Town Treasurer, but she's not here quite yet. Before we get started, one of the things I was remiss in doing last week, as folks were going through their budget presentations, there wasn't really a clear contrast drawn between what their requests had been and what my recommendation had been. So just to reiterate what my recommendations to you folks are, which is the budget that we start from. It's not the request that we start from, it's my recommendation that we start from. This is the cut sheet from the PowerPoint presentation when I presented the budget, but just so that you can keep in mind what has changed from the original ask. There's a bunch there.
Okay.
Oh, it's just one page?
It's just one page, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's small font though. So that's, what's that?
This is a way better fun.
Oh, yeah, then right.
Yeah, sorry.
So with that said, the first up is the Veterans Commission. Mr. Chairman, please come right up, tell us what you're looking for and why. That'll be, I think it's in tab 7.
6 towards the end.
6?
Yeah.
Not activities.
Second page towards the end.
All right.
There's something in activities also, I forget what it is all the time. It's Memorial Day, it's cemetery flags.
That is it.
The main one for the Veterans Commission is simply for recording secretary.
Floor is yours.
So it's $1,200 for recording secretary, $100 a month, which is in the middle of the range, as far as I can see. So this function is not something that deserves the bottom of the range where it's very little time expended, and doesn't necessarily deserve the top of the range like Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, things like that. So the rate is $100 a meeting. The recording secretary also does, she helps out a lot on correspondence and online activities and things like that. A lot of these events that we do, she helps. A lot of the tasks that need to be done fall to me. and she helps out quite a bit in terms of correspondence and like online application to the government for the flyover for Memorial Day or all kinds of other things, so I think it's a bargain.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Jim does do an awful lot for these folks. He's in town hall often, either carrying this flag or another, but he shows up quite a bit. Any questions on the Veterans Commission or their request? You want to talk to us about the flags for Memorial Day?
Yeah, this is essentially the cemetery flags. It's more than 1,000 flags for the graves and the flags on the poles at each of the 7 cemeteries, the 3x5 American.
And I think both asked for $1,200.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why that is. It used to be less. And you can use it, but
Please do.
it kind of confuses me that they're both the same. Kind of wish they were different.
Sarah?
So I know you had previously stated in your meeting that you plan on leaving them out for less time this year. Do you think maybe going forward we might be able to, well, we'll find out, but maybe use them for another year and get more life out of them?
I do, although I'm scared because nobody really wants to do that. And I don't know if it's going to be revisited.
Okay.
We're trying to please a lot of different people. We're trying to please everybody that wants flags flying on these graves all the time. We're trying to be cognizant of the flags that get deteriorated and look terrible after a certain period of time. We're trying to be cognizant of the requirements for flags to be illuminated, which those are not. Even those little flags, they're not supposed to be out at night. They're not illuminated. They're not supposed to be out in the weather. But everybody puts them out. Some put them out for Memorial Day, some for a period of time like Memorial Day to July 4th, Memorial Day to Veterans Day, something like that. We're also trying to be cognizant of the appearance of the cemeteries and the groundskeeping. You're going to hear about that.
I already got a complaint. I already received a complaint via email saying that they have to be taken down 2 weeks after they're put up because it interferes with the mowing of the flat stones, because I guess they're now mowing over the stones. So I did receive a complaint on that already.
Well, wait, Sarah's right. We did vote at one point to put them out the week before Memorial Day and take them in the week after, which, if that can be accomplished, and if we can save the boxes or some receptacle to put them in and bring them back more carefully, we could probably use them for several years. But like I say, I don't know if my board's gonna rebel and revisit that, because it was a hard-fought battle many years ago to keep those out, to keep those on display, and that's what most people want. And there's a statute that says, we put those out there, you can't remove them. But the American Legion also advises to put them out and remove them as soon as possible after Memorial Day because of the flag regulations that I cited a few minutes ago. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and that's where we are right now. We think we're going to put them out for Memorial Day and take them back in.
Other questions or comments? BOF guys?
Where do we buy those? What country are they made in?
China?
Now, it's a sore subject with some of us.
No, they're made in the USA. We buy them up in Chicopee at Century.
Not a bad question, though.
I know.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks very much.
Okay.
Short and painless.
I hope so.
Next up, American Heritage River. This is in tab 7.
Peace with me.
You brought the enforcer?
Yes, yeah. No, I'm the enforcer, she's the, you go through this.
Just trying to get my face here. There's a lot of supporting information in here.
One was a little bit on top.
That's it?
Halfway through, yeah, right after Windsor probate.
I kept it simple. The 3,500 is what we've asked for in the past. So we didn't ask for anything to increase. The 3,500 broke down to be $1,200 for the secretary minutes. Again, similar to what Jim Barton said, there's more to what secretary does other than just minutes. Particularly, we're always looking to the state to see whether or not there's any grants to give us some money to help with the trail work that we do, back and forth with the various river agencies to see what else is going on. So I think that secretary minutes amount is justified. We had 2,000 that we requested for E. coli reagents. We've been testing the river, the Scannick River, for more than that. Several years, more than almost 10 years. Looking for E. coli. We say E. coli, but there's various other bacteria that we identify. And that is done from May until September. We are up to 10 test sites. Sadly, the Broadbrook section of the Scannick River, which is 38 miles long, is the most heavily polluted with bacteria. So we are not the only ones testing. All of our numbers have made people in the state and throughout the watershed aware of what's going on. So our numbers are being fed into other dynamics to see if they can identify the source of this. And we do have 2 professors at University of St. Joseph that are working on identifying the bacteria and trying to find the source. We have been testing way back, just we were looking for temperature and that to see what did as far as the fish population, but then we started looking at the bacteria and trying to identify the source.
That's an annual test.
Correct, correct. So just looking at the temperature goes on 12 months out of the year. For the bacteria, it's during pretty much the summertime, May till September. And we actually are the town that tests the longest and the most places. But and that is because as we've been doing it, we're realizing we're the area that's most heavily polluted. Now, of course, everything flows down. We're just about the last town before South Windsor, before the Connecticut River, but still, we still seem to have pockets that are way, way above what everybody else is. So I don't think you want to stop the testing. We've been lucky to have the people that are doing the testing doing it for free. All we pay for are the reagents. And those reagents We've been able to buy in bulk, so even though we've expanded to 10 sites, we've been able to keep the cost of the reagents down relatively. The reagents are very, very sensitive. They can't be held over. They have to be bought and then used within a certain time frame. So it's not like, well, we could buy 10 years worth. That's not going to work. Anyway, the cost has been between $1,800 and we don't know whether or not it's going to go up. And we actually are hoping to do 1 or 2 more sites. We also, besides being river people, we conduct hikes. We have a first day of the year hike, New Year's Day, and we draw almost 300 people to the town. We're not only providing recreation opportunity, we have a free will petition out for canned goods. This year we gave the Five Corner Cupboard 499 pounds of food. So our hike not only brought 300 people into the town, but it also benefited our food share. So we provide a porta potty. So there's a rental for the porta potty, because if you've got 300 people around for 2-3 hours, it just stands to reason that it's a necessity. The $150 for subscriptions are for 2 river organizations. They feed us information as to what else is going on in the Scannick River area and in the Connecticut River area. What else is going on impacts some of the information that we need. So again, those subscriptions we feel are necessary. That's the $3,500.
Any questions?
I'd just like to say thank you guys and the commission for all the work you guys have been doing. I know it's a ton and it's just nonstop for so long. And I mean,
20 years this year.
Right, 20 years. I thought it was longer, but it's obviously a quality of life improvement for everybody, but it's also, I had a real estate agent tell me just yesterday, selling me on the fact that there was this trail in proximity to this house that he was showing us. So, you know, it's a plus side on you know, a reason to live in East Windsor. So.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple things to add. Today, when we were down checking the bridges and stuff, there was a guy walking and he walked the whole 2.5 miles. And when we got out, he followed us out. He was out of New York. Now, he's probably employed somewhere around, but, you know, they come from everywhere. And secondly...
And he thanked us for the beautiful bridges and the work that we've done. So it wasn't his first time there.
And second thing is, at the university, there is an organization that started at the university. What's the name of it?
The Scannick River Watershed Partnership Monitoring Partnership.
Okay, this group is people from the university, people from...
Sierra Club, DEP.
The state rep up in
Right. And
Enfield.
Sornoni?
Yes,
Yes.
Ted O'Neill's
Yes.
part of it. But, and then what, the GIS?
Yeah, the government people, because they got a test site down here on the...
Mill Street.
Mill Street,
Yes,
yeah,
Mill
it's the
Chestnut Creek?
Chestnut and Mill Street. And all of our information that we're getting is, like it said, we have found a problem. Because, I mean, the state knows that this area here and this section here is highly polluted, in the summertime especially.
Yeah.
And that's why you may see the signs that I put up. And when the university comes over with students, and they test the water on Wednesdays, and they have to do their test, and then they go back to the college, and they start the test. Once the test is half going, they have to incubate it for 24 hours. The students come back into school. Now, these people are off during the summer, and they come back into school, and they finish the test. The professors that are involved with us, what they do is they check the results and the counts and stuff like this, and then they put it out. We get a copy, a whole bunch of people get a copy. University of Mass has been using our information. UConn's been using our information, and some other places. But what this is all about is that we're trying to find out what's causing it, because it's here today, it's not here tomorrow. And, you know, we've got possibilities, but we have to prove them. And all these people are volunteers. Like I say, other than the testing materials, it hasn't cost anybody anything. And I changed the signs. We got 3 signs. Blue means whatever you want to do in that river, you have a good time. If it's yellow, we suggest you can only go in it with a boat, rowboat, canoe, or kayak. And if it's red, we're suggesting not to go in it at all. And because if you get a cut on you or something like that, and you're in the water, or your dog is down there swimming around, and it gets some kind of a disease or whatever have you, infection, this is a warning. I mean, we can't tell them they can't go in the water, but where we're doing is we're just putting up the warning. And I change them as soon as I get that information every Thursday. So that's the operation, the procedure, the way it goes. And a lot of people don't know it, but the more and more people get out. And then also, one thing that we also do is, if you've never been to it, we have a cardboard boat race, and the kids love it. And we are the duck herders for the duck race for the BMX people. So that we have that in the summertime too, and that draws a pretty good crowd also. And we get a lot of people from out of town. One year we had 2 kids from Avon that came, and both of their boats sunk. And I was walking up and I was going to help the kid. The kid says, "No, I'll drag it up," because that's one of the rules. You got, if your cardboard canoe sinks, and the kid says, "Dad, I know it's what was wrong." And father says, "What?" And he says, "Dad, we can't use water-based paint." Okay? I mean, that kid had it all going for him, and he was only about yay high. But we provide a lot, and there's always somebody down there. Wintertime, we have snowshoers. There's a group that comes in, and in the summertime, of course, we got the walkers all the time. And we also have cross-country skiers that help pack it down in the wintertime when it's snow.
Now, when you do your testing, do you do it just in one area, or do you actually go along the scanning?
There's 10
And
sites.
There's 10
10
different sites along the range.
Well, for the E. coli, and then there's, what is it, 20 for the year-long one, and that's mainly for, just for a clarification, that's mainly for like fertilizers, runoff stuff, and it's the whole thing in East Windsor.
So you're checking the fertilizer runoff?
Yeah, anything like that.
Well,
And any of the dirt that's being delivered into town to see if it's running off?
we're seeing whether or not the pH level changes,
Okay,
okay?
Yeah.
all right.
From whatever
Because
reason.
somebody had a concern with that, and I don't know anything about it, so that's why I'm throwing it to you guys.
Well, see, a lot of people don't know that we test year-round, but the E. coli is in the summertime because, and why we use E. coli is because everybody knows about E. coli. You know, the grocery store had some food with E. coli. You know, if we put some of the other chemicals that have been found in the river, like the Professor Doobie says, he says, I'd have to get a dictionary just to say the word. He says they're about that long.
Vibrio parahemolyticus?
I don't
Maybe.
know what you're talking about.
It's a strain of E. coli and related to cholera, but
Yeah.
E. coli spikes when the water temperature gets above 50
And,
degrees. That's when it comes
so
alive.
in summertime, when the water's warmer, that's when we get it.
And they use the E. coli test as an indicator. When it's above a certain threshold, then you can pretty much assume the other 4 or 5
Oh, yes.
Right.
strains are there or
Right.
whatever.
Any other questions or comments for American Heritage River? At some point, when you get your next round of test results, in the past, you've come and done a presentation. Since this is a new group, it might be cool to include that on an upcoming agenda when you have the information.
Every year, the college puts out
A state of the Scannic.
State of the Scannic. Every year, one goes into your office.
Okay.
You should have them in there.
What time does it, what time of the year?
October, November, December, somewhere in there. I think it went out in December this year.
I didn't get a copy of that.
I will make sure you get a copy.
We got extras at the house.
And we'd love to have you guys come and, or Dr. Martin come and explain. Is she still around?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kind of do just a primer on what it is you're studying. I mean, there's great graphics in there and
What you want is
They
Dr.
did a great
Doobie.
presentation at the library this past, when was that?
Yes, it
You-
was in September.
Right after the election.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was right around.
Did you have Dr. Doobie or did you have Dr. Martin?
It was
Boy or
Dr.
girl?
Martin and the Sierra Club guy and one other person.
That was,
That
It was a
in
great
the Warehouse
presentation.
Point.
Yeah, at the Warehouse Point Library.
Right.
Yeah.
so, yeah,
There
we
was one
can,
up in Enfield, one is up.
we can arrange for you guys and anybody else that wants to come. They love to, well, Dr. Doobie gives a real good one because he's a bacteriologist. Okay,
It was interesting.
but, yeah.
well, we'll look forward to that
All right.
whenever it's ready.
Oh,
Good to see you.
you
both.
want it, we'll get it. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need these?
Sure, why
Sure.
not?
Cemetery Association.
What tab everybody
They're in activities and fees too, I think.
We make the book?
Just
You made-
notice, I think, tab 7 on
Greetings,
the
greetings,
activities.
Dale.
That one, right?
Jason, said how you go,
Mr. Byrne, how are you?
rest of it?
That was it. The small print.
That?
Small.
Remember, we were in your office not too long.
Yeah, but it was in color when it was in my office.
You need this one?
I could give you a color copy if you'd like.
I have this one. This is good. Good turnout.
You know, there was actually room on the page to enlarge that.
We were thinking about you. because we know.
One year I might just get rid of the notes, but the first year I did this, I had a lot of questions, so I tried to cover all of this with some of the notes.
So go ahead and walk us through this.
Sure, so you have the actual numbers on the left and the estimated on the right. Last year, we received $20,000 from the town. We made a little over $3,000 from burials and foundations. So we charge when there is a funeral burial or when someone needs to install a foundation to put a marker in. And that's slightly profitable for us. It allows us to cover, our small expenses, which are really insurance, some minor, salaries, and just the general operation. We outsource all of that to third parties, and that's the resulting, I'll say, profit for that. Stock and bond income comes off of the perpetual care fund, which is when someone buys a plot, that money goes into the perpetual care fund. We're only allowed by our bylaws to use income off that fund. We can't touch the principal.
You're expecting a
then-
way down year in the market then?
What do you mean?
Well, your actual was 19.4, you're budgeting 5.1.
Where you at? We're at the
Oh,
top. We're at the top.
I was talking about well, I'll let you get to that then.
Oh, in terms of perpetual cares?
Yeah.
Sold.
Yeah.
Yes.
We kind of had a bumper crop this year.
What?
If we sell 8 or 10, that's a big year for perpetual cares.
Okay. I'm gonna let you, I'm not gonna interrupt again.
We happen to have a lot this year. Donations, usually it's, past several years, it's been around, $500 if we get anything one-off, that goes in there. And then all of that is used to fund the big activities that we do, which is take care of the cemetery. So lawn care, we have a vendor that we outsource that to. As long as I've been doing this, we haven't seen a price increase, so I know that that's got to be coming one of these years. That's a set contracted amount, but
With additions.
with additions on there for, miscellaneous, branches that fall down and things of that nature. Snow plowing, we usually run between like $8,000 and $10,000. It was a light year last year, the way our fiscal year is cut. And we also had to find a new vendor, the guy who was plowing for us previously. Quit. And then we did a small amount of tree work. The biggest thing that fluctuates or that we will cut back on or enhance depending on the budget is tree work, paving, and fencing. So we haven't done a lot of maintenance to roads. We did install a new road several years ago, which put a big hurt on us. And last year we did the fence in front of the cemetery next to Southern Auto with the help of a
Benefactor.
anonymous benefactor. So we actually showed a little over $7,000 loss last year, and we purposely cut back on all of those other things this year to sort of get back to even, which is why you see that maintenance and improvement, profit. We generally try to run, break even on all of that stuff. What we know is coming down the pike is, more fencing. I put in $2,000, but subsequent to this, we got a quote for the cemetery in Scantic. That was what, $5,500?
Yep, for repair.
Just to replace all the spindles on there. So if we go ahead with that, that number's already shot. Which,
We did go ahead with it.
right, we decided to do that, so we're gonna have to cut back on something else, like the paving, but that's always a give and take thing. It's like, how bad do you want it to get before you can't salvage it anymore and you have to replace it?
We're in exactly the same boat. Road maintenance is like the first thing that gets just eviscerated every year.
Right, so I guess we're in the same boat in the sense that we put some in every year, and then depending on where the numbers fall, we usually take it back out, so. Getting down to where you were on the perpetual cares. So we always get questions about this, so I include it. We did have a lot of plots that were sold last year, which was sort of unusual. Again, that money goes into our fund and then whatever income we draw off of that. So if it's, 6-7% continuously, we'll have that money for next year. And then we also received a small amount of money from the Morton Trust, which was set up almost a decade ago, or a century ago now, specifically for the Windsor Cemetery, which allows us some money that we have to use specifically for the Windsor Cemetery. We have to report that back to the trustees, which happens to be Morgan's, Bank of America, sorry. So we always break that out because we have to report it back to them for that purpose. And it used to be a lot more, and that seems to be getting whittled down too.
Is that the same thing where it's the interest that's available and not the principal, or is it?
Yeah, it's just the interest, but Bank of America fees are not exactly going down. So,
Can you shop that around?
we can't because
We have to ask Bank of America if we can.
Oh, I'm sure they're just.
And what do they say?
the way the trust was set up, there was a bank that was the trustee, and through acquisitions of banks, it's now Bank of America. And we're only one beneficiary along with the other trusts that are set up. So they manage all of those trusts because they're now the bank that gobbled up whatever little bank it was 100 years ago. So if you want to go to sleep, one night you can always read the will. It's very interesting. So,
I fall asleep pretty easily.
yeah.
Any questions or comments? Guys? Thanks for coming in.
Try to play nice with the
Yeah, you guys got to work that out.
I was
Stop stealing
I
that
was
flag.
gonna go there, but I just figured I'd better. You guys work it out.
Registrars.
Good evening.
How are you, sir?
The Office of Registrar has nothing exciting to announce compared to last year. We now have slightly over 8,400 registered voters in the town. Our emphasis this year is going to be on increasing the per diem to our poll workers and also expanding the number of poll workers we have, because we're at the point where the existing poll workers no longer wish to do this because of their age, and that has to be respected. So we'll be spending time to try to entice people to join us in our frolic. So it's a quiet budget this year. I can't say it's going to be that way next year, because we're anticipating a number of capital expenditures that the state's going to mandate. Namely, our polling machines are reaching their useful life, and our polling stations are deteriorating around us. So I don't know what the state's going to do. Denise does not always tell us in advance what they're going to do. We usually find out a couple of weeks ahead of time, but I would anticipate next year our budget will be radically different than what you're looking at this year. But for now, we're bidding Karen, hurry up and pass the rest of her exams.
I got one coming up in April.
Well, not to pressure you at all, because I get there's a lot there, but will you be finished in this fiscal year, or will it spill over into the next fiscal year?
It will most likely go into the next fiscal year. I don't want to try to do anything during the budget season.
There's a lot to learn. And they
Well,
change the laws all the time,
Yes.
which is super helpful.
Yes. Well, that's why you have that whole row of blue books.
Yeah. So you want to walk us through what's here, or what the asks are?
So what the asks are 2% increase in Karen and my salary. The job of register of voters is something, with the possible exception of Marie, we have no clue what we do. We don't advertise it because we sometimes don't know what the state's going to expect us to do. The salary part-time is for all of our poll workers. We're asking for a modest increase in that. Rollback, that's our organization, has advised us that all poll workers should be treated as employees and not as independent contractors. We haven't, in East Windsor, adopted that position yet, but I suspect we will have to in the near future.
Amy, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, the problem is, most of them don't work regularly. They might be here for one primary or one thing, and then off because they're away for a different period of time. That's usually why they are not considered employees. They're 1099 people, is because they get to choose whether they feel like working that election, or this one, or that one.
So does the new minimum wage law, is that impacted by whether or not you're a W-2 employee or a 1099 employee?
I can imagine it's not. I mean, we would have that same question then with all our recording secretaries too. They're really essentially the same kind of thing.
Yeah, but
But they make
they're
more.
making well over $15 an hour if you amortize it out. Sorry, thank you.
Really? You can home with me tonight.
I think if they're 1099s, they're not employees.
I'm sorry?
We treat them as 1099s. And if they do that, I don't think they're subject to FICA and federal tax or pension laws or any of that stuff. But if the state of Connecticut is telling us that they should be considered employees, I think we have to maybe get that to our
Is
town
there
attorney.
literature? Is there literature out there from them on that?
Well, and I was going to ask if it's the state that's saying that they should be considered employees, or ROVAC, which is a
think
lobbying
both.
organization.
I think both. And no, we don't have, we ask for documentation on that, and all we get is opinions.
Well, the 1099 is considered part of your income and it does get taxed at the end of the
Yeah,
year.
but what it
But you don't have to
doesn't do is we
withhold
don't pay
taxes.
Right.
FICA on them.
But you still have to
You
pay
still have to
taxes at
report
the
it,
end of the
yeah.
year.
So they have to pay their own FICA,
That's right.
both halves of it, as self-employed.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our media card expense is projected to be half what it was because we don't anticipate having 15 questions on our referendum ballots.
Just wait.
That was a nightmare to try to program, and it cost us some money to do that, but we're not anticipating that. We can handle up to 5 questions per referendum.
So that's something important for us to keep in mind. How does that, so if there is...
$200 a card.
No, my question is if there is in fact referendum questions to put forward to the voters, how many can you handle on a presidential election ballot? How many questions can you handle?
I would say we can handle 5.
The 5, yeah.
Yeah. It's a municipal ballot that gets real crowded.
Okay.
Any questions?
Anybody want to work on elections?
Are any of us eligible to? I would bet not.
Call your friends.
You are, as long as you're not on the
Yeah, as long
ballot.
as you're not on the ballot.
So we'll come knocking.
I have the day booked off already. Any other questions? How many referendum, or I'm sorry, how many elections are you planning for in fiscal '21?
In elections, we're contemplating 1 primary and 1 national election.
So that one primary would be a potentially August primary?
Oh, fiscal '21?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we're budgeting for any.
So if there is a state primary, it would be in August.
Yes.
Yes.
And then if there is a municipal primary in '21, it would be in September, which is in fiscal '22. So you only have the one potential primary, and it's unlikely.
This budget contemplates 1 primary, 1 election, and 3 referendums.
Consider the 3 budgets.
Okay.
But we are having 2 primaries.
For what?
We are having 2 primaries, but it'll be the same thing, the same workers.
The
We're
Republicans are
having,
primary.
Republicans are primary.
Oh, that's in this fiscal year. I was talking
In
about
this- right.
in next. There's at most 1, and it's not likely. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Conservation and agriculture. I'm guessing you guys are going to come up jointly.
And
It's in 6. Thank you.
Just to explain open space funding and what can be done.
Thank you.
So, just the Ag Commission first, which we're requesting a continuation of our secretarial budget of $500. The Agriculture Commission is, we try to promote agriculture in town, and we partner with the Enfield Nantucket Northern Connecticut Agricultural Summit, which is a seminar kind of a thing, which is coming up February 29th. So this spearheaded by the town of Enfield, but it's regional. Summers in Suffield and East Windsor participate. And we have a farmer's coffee coming up, which is just a social meet and greet kind of for East Windsor farmers and people that are interested in farming. And
That's the 14th, right?
that's the 14th of March. we administer the community garden, and that's about 11 plots per year rented. And people enjoy that. We fielded some grants, and especially in conjunction with Park and Rec, to get water, a water tank, and compost, and different things. We collect fees for the gardens, which pays for most of our plowing and things like that get done by volunteers, but we have a reserve in case we have to buy compost and services.
Do you have a date for the plowing yet?
No, usually we shut up in the garden May 1st. Which is really, so the plowing would be as close to that as possible.
Yeah, that's a fun event.
Yep. If we do it, it's mostly one person that has to organize it, and it's guys that have the horses that come and they volunteer, everything volunteer.
You guys ever seen that done? Everybody been to that? So they actually plow the community garden with a horse-drawn plow, like they did, 150 years ago.
Usually have 3 teams.
It's a cool thing. They can you do a full acre in like 20 minutes.
Well, they do the whole 2 acres because they don't want to stop once they start. Even though we can't use that much space, they like to have a day of it. So we have a food truck there, and it's
You can haul them out,
pretty
that's
well
when they work, right?
Yeah, they are disappointed when they're done.
Can you let us know when that does get scheduled?
It should be around May 1st, depends on weather and when their schedules are. There's quite a few plowing events around that these Teamsters go to.
I think my son would get a kick out of that, so that'll be a field trip.
Yeah, they're big to stand next to. So that's what the Ag Commission does. We're trying to resurrect the Kogut, part of the Kogut farm, which is a project coming
you were
up.
walking the old, was it tobacco section?
There's a section that was 11.5 acres, and it had tobacco tents on it with wires and poles, and that kind of got overgrown, and it's deteriorating. So the poles are rotting off, and the wires are coming down.
You guys walked that together, right?
Yeah, Alan GPS'd it. And we're looking for a grant. I heard about a grant at the Ag Summit last year.
Farm restoration grant?
Farm restoration grant that went after municipalities can be up to 90% match.
Yep.
So I thought that was a pretty good opportunity, which is kind of a hazard the way it is now, because the wires are coming down, you can't really see them, and there's activity in there. Kids go in there and write ATVs, and there's evidence of activity in there. So it would be a good thing to clean up, plus if it was cleaned up and made tillable again, it's a good farm field and could be rented, which the rest of Kogut farm fields are rented, so potentially could pay for itself in not too long. We have a tree land clearing company that is given an estimate, and they're supposed to submit a written estimate, at which point we could go through the town and pursue a restoration grant with the state. Hopefully that'll happen this spring, and that could be done probably in the winter. It's easier to do it in the winter time, so it would be next winter. We'd be looking at the earliest opportunities to get in there. When the leaves die down, you can really see what's going on.
That'd be good.
There's a lot of things to do before that can happen.
I'm sorry, who's asking? Yes, Amy.
We do not currently use our recording secretaries actually on either commission. Is there a specific reason why we're not using the money even though we're budgeting it?
We didn't have, I was doing the minutes for quite a while, but now we have 2 secretaries, one for each. So
we'll start to see, okay.
We had bills last year.
It's also been represented to me that the town does not staff either of those commissions at the request of those commissions. Is that correct?
For secretarial?
No.
For support staff?
Like
Oh, no. Well, Peg helps us out a lot.
No, but I mean, I'm sure she does, but it's relatively common for a staff person to be assigned to a board or commission to help them with.
For the liaison?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it used to be the assistant town planner was when we first started out as a commission.
And it's been represented to me that that stopped at your request. Is that correct or not?
Oh, no, not my request.
Okay, thank you.
No, we had We have a lot of volunteer, we do a lot of volunteer work to get what we need done, and we need guidance. So that's what we come to the planning office for. And we work through the planning office, and Ruben's pretty responsive too, if we ask questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And on conservation, so we have the same request for a secretarial budget as last year. And then also an open space request up till, now the town doesn't, the open space fund is funded just by fees in lieu of, and accumulated over 30 years or so. We had a major expenditure 2 years ago at this point for that to preserve one piece of property. And it's, I think there's $34,000 left in the open space budget now, and so I'm asking for $50,000 to start rebuilding that, just so we can take advantage of any opportunities that might come along. There are some, at least one on the horizon I know of, a pretty large, prominent parcel in town that the owners would like to preserve.
Where did you ask for that?
I submitted the request.
In CIP? Is that the CIP request?
No, it was in the budget.
Oh, so it came in after, okay. You want 50,000?
I thought we got under the wire. I thought you
No, they were due in December,
Oh.
but
Yeah,
we'll talk about it.
yeah.
So that's not an open funding budget line?
Well, if they're asking for $50,000, the question is, are we going to do that as an appropriation, or are we going to do that another way? You know, that's something that could be a fund balance expenditure. That's something that could be done through bonding, depending on the amount that they were looking to do. But this is the first I heard about an appropriation ask. So we can talk about it. I don't even know where that would go. Where would that go?
I mean, they did come to CIP also, looking for, I think, a couple $100,000.
No,
I don't catch it from you.
I can look it up. I don't
think
remember
the
the number
request
off the
was-
top of my head, but they did come to us looking for some funds to help replenish.
CIP request was to replenish the open space fund to the $250,000 level that it was at for the purchase, the two purchases that we made last year.
How long did it take to get it to the 250,000 last time?
Forever.
Like, I don't know, at least 15 years. Yeah, at least 30 years probably, I would say, since they started taking fees in lieu of.
So so then that was
There have been-
largely eaten up by our portion of the 40 Rise Street?
I think the only purchase that I remember making up from the open space fund previously was the piece of property on the Scannick River where 140 crosses the Scannick River in Broadbrook. On the south side of the road there, there's about a 15-acre piece that the town bought for $6,000, I think, a number of years ago.
We did two purchases in the last couple of years. We did the Sabonis
Yes,
Sabonis
along the
Landing.
river, and then we did the state, and that's only actually development rights. That's not really purchase of land.
Yeah, it was an easement along the corridor.
Yep.
So, I mean, right now, we have 34,000 left in there, so that's not even enough if we were to do, it's not enough for a 25% match on even like $300,000 or...
It's enough to do a boundary survey and appraisal work. You know, and the state is negotiable with what, depending on what the town's resources are, with what they have for some sort of a match parameter, or at least they were when I was there.
Seems like 25% is what...
They always try and get that
They're asking for it.
out of municipalities, but, you know, if the funding isn't available, their mission is to preserve agricultural lands. So they like to get towns to buy in, but really what they're trying to do is match their dollar against federal dollars, because the feds have a bigger bank account than everybody in town. And so the NRCS reimburses the state 50% of the costs of the acquisition of the development rights. They like to get the town buy-in too, because it leverages their bond funding better, but does not happen all the time. They may have changed in the years since I've been gone, but that was their philosophy when I was there. We'd love municipal buy-in, but we're going to buy it anyway, is how we approached it.
Okay.
Jay?
Yeah, who's asking?
CIP request was 250,000.
Okay.
I think it was to bring it up to 250,000 from whatever point it was at, but, yep, that would be the, then that's an arbitrary number, obviously. But that's what it took to consummate the property that we did, the easement that we did buy. Which is 100 acre piece with road frontage, which is just, that would be a, I don't know, a good sized piece. The leverage, Yep, the piece that we bought in, on Rice Street was a, we paid 25% of the cost of it, which was $235,000, and that was the price. That was the 25% of the development value of the parcel, which was $940,000, and the total cost was $1,640,000 as the value of the total property. And so for the $235,000, which is 14% of the total value of the parcel, we preserved it as agricultural land rather than.
It was going to be houses otherwise.
It would be houses, yeah. Yeah.
That's absolutely, that's exactly what the fund is for.
We don't want to, it's rather be positive than negative, I guess. You can't say we don't want houses, but we do want agriculture. And
well, so knocking on a lot of doors, you hear people say we want to preserve the town's rural character. And what they often mean is, I don't want to see anything happen. But preserving our rural character is an actionable thing. And that's what you guys did.
And food security is ultimately the goal too, because farmland grows food, and in the future there will be more people, we'll need more food, locals better, locals cheaper in the end, if you consider trucking and everything else. Plus rural character. And it also, there's also the Scannick River corridor, which is biodiversity and recreational areas too, so there are opportunities there that crop up for purchasing property.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks guys. Good to see you both.
She doesn't have the CIP book.
I'm not sure they've been given out.
We got it in November.
I have one in my office, but I wasn't sure that it had been distributed to everybody.
Yes,
They were
the CIP.
CIP books.
Speaking of, come on down. Who's speaking for you guys?
Bob and I will try to.
Happy President's Day.
Yeah, I know, right?
Everybody wants to be doing on their holiday, for sure.
I don't know if you guys have the letter that I sent you. I didn't reprint it because I got emailed to both boards, yours and the Board of Finance.
It doesn't look like it.
Huh?
It doesn't look like it's in your book, at least it's not in mine. Capital's
I
under
can
tab
pull it up
7,
on my phone.
towards the back, there's debt.
No
Oh,
kidding.
I have the letter, if you guys like copies of it.
Yeah, would you mind?
I had the letter, and Amy had also had the table behind it, which I might find helpful.
Yep.
Tooling around on Facebook today, and somebody put up their 4 favorite presidents, and one of them was James K. Polk. I was like, that's out of left field. It was like Teddy Roosevelt, Reagan, thank you. Teddy Roosevelt, Reagan, Thomas Jefferson, and James K. Polk. I was like, which of these does not belong?
Thank you.
Thank you for the kisses. Go over to go. She's printing you one.
Thanks for my calendar.
Made Alex a photo book for Christmas. It was crazy expensive because I had like 900 pictures in there.
Did you do that on Shutterfly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really fun
You
though.
needed one of those free book coupons.
That would have helped. For Shutterfly. Well, Mother's Day is in May, so I'm sure I can make that work.
I was trying to save trees, so I did a print. I don't have it, sorry.
I have it.
Well, you have the spreadsheet. You have
This came with a book.
This has more explanation than the spreadsheet.
Yes.
I love most of them.
Did you guys get any feedback from the police commission?
Everything was positive.
Just wanted to make sure it got to our... I think about that slide, that one slide, I was laughing.
I'd have to check my calendar, that sounds about right.
So you guys are going with
I think it's actually the following.
Selectmen, legal activities, and then revenue.
Oh, okay.
They're usually only once a month.
They must be doing a special.
They must be doing a special.
Yeah, I got it downloaded.
I don't know.
I haven't been requesting, so.
Don't have it down there.
What are we talking about?
You guys were to Board of Finance with your budget.
That, they have set that date. I don't remember what it is offhand.
It would just be nice for me to get you these emails before then.
Oh, it'll be, yeah, it's like way out.
Yeah, here it is.
We'll be done, if all goes according to plan, we'll be done, I hope Thursday. And then,
It's gonna,
Yep.
I don't think it's till their March meeting.
Okay.
It's like
I have it down.
weeks and weeks.
I just wanted to do, I know you know that's what you're doing, but you have minutes.
It would be,
Maybe
actually, it would be ideal if we can meet, if we can finish this week and the Board of Ed is finished in shortish order, we might be able to accelerate that a bit ahead of the Board of Finance. Would be really ideal. That's up to them.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Oh, shoot.
I didn't realize it wasn't in the
Thank
book.
you.
Thank you.
color.
Well, that chart would be hard to read not in color.
Oh, okay.
So I'll start off by, I know the letter came in a long time ago, so maybe just kind of review a little bit. The total requests for this year is somewhere in the tune of about $7.5 million. We obviously did not put that much forth to you guys, but we didn't separate things out a little bit. So if you look at the tables, we try to break it up into different groupings. The first set on the first page and 2/3 of the way down the second page are the annual projects, things that come before us annually for some level of funding, vehicles, public works, that kind of stuff. The second section are the somewhat annual projects, or one-time projects, although some of them often take more than 1 year in order to obtain the level of funding that they need. So that is the end of the second page and most of the third page, all of the third page. The fourth page of the table is things that really can't be accommodated within the CIP budget and we're recommending for bonding. And then the last page are the projects that we did not recommend for funding this year. And looking at the annual things that come up every year, police vehicles. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into about each of these, so.
Your choice. The floor is yours.
I don't want to keep you here all night either. You can read.
Keep in mind it's a new board, so I don't think going into some detail is a bad thing.
Okay. So a number of years ago, we started, when I took over the chairmanship of the CIP, we started looking at, instead of trying to fund 2 vehicles one year, 3 vehicles the next, 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles, which just does this to the curve and the request. We started trying to fund 2.5 so that they could spread it out over time and save the half car till the following year when they get the other half kind of thing. Some of the challenges they're facing are that the sedans are no longer made, so they're choosing Ford or the Chevy police utility vehicles as a replacement. Unfortunately, that means most of the custom equipment that they need is not reusable because of the change in design. So this request is an estimate as well because there was no availability of final costs at the time that they came before us. Some of the other things that might be interesting to note on the vehicles, they did get 2 Chevy Tahoes this year because the Fords are back ordered for so long that they can't even get on the wait list. So they're hoping that the Chevys is a new vehicle for them, and they're hoping that that will work out well. Price-wise, I think they were fairly comparable, so what they go forward with will probably depend on how well the Chevy Tahoes work out and when Ford's wait list backs up. The Tahoe Pursuit rating lifespan is actually longer than the Ford, but they were a little bit more expensive, $37,000 versus $32,000. And we're including, as we go forward, starting this year, we included the estimated costs plus the costs of the equipment that would have to go into them. So it's not just the vehicle, but all of the equipment that's in that 110 for 2.5 vehicles. And we'll probably be planning to add a percentage adder because the price of cars doesn't go down. So that number will continue to
Here again,
increase.
the new Fords, even if we stick with the Fords, which we probably will, the new Fords are a total different cab on chassis design, whereas all the older Ford equipment that we had doesn't fit, so.
Pretty much all the old
The
equipment
light
is
bar
going to
is
be.
something we can swap.
Yeah.
Silver lining. But not the brackets.
There's very little that
We
will carry over,
guys don't add any
unfortunately.
more lights to the vehicles, because the lights you have on some of these vehicles blind you when you're coming down the road.
They do.
Overkill.
The chip sealing, second one, chip sealing roads, that's something that the $75,000 that we put in is then reimbursed by the state LoSiP program. And we fund that annually to take advantage of that program. Pavement management, we never give what anybody asks for. There's been in 2017, there was an independent study showing that 17% of our roads need base rehabilitation, 15% need structural improvement, 24% are in need of preventative maintenance, and only about 44% didn't need work in 2017. So more than half our roads need work. And we continually chip away at what we give Lenny. So again, we did not give him his full ask. He asked for $1 million. We recommended 600,000 at this time. So he's already getting cut from what he's looking for. The Next Gen Solutions, this is the last of 4 payments.
Do you know realistically, if you funded them more money, if they could accomplish the task at hand? Or will they have to job that out?
Lenny says he can use what we give him. If we give it to him, he can use it.
They have some capacity to do additional or more in detailed work before they would need to bring in contracted staff.
And one of the things we talked about a couple of years ago was perhaps to try to catch up some of the backlog, and we didn't include that this year, but would be to do like kind of a bond payment that would give him a big chunk so that they could start to really whittle away at the backlog and get more current. But there hasn't really been a flavor for that, so we didn't put it back in this year. The Next Gen Solutions, that's the 4th committed payment to finalize the purchase of the software used by the police department. Probably don't need to tell you much more about that. The vehicles for Public Works, those are ongoing replacement of their Parks and Grounds and Public Works vehicles and equipment. So it covers the replacement of all Public Works vehicles, mowers, loaders, pickups, bulldozers, whatever it is they need, dump trucks. Their last purchase was a used GMC small 6-wheel dump truck. And then their next purchase will sort of depend on priorities at the time and the funding available. So they...
Is that the truck they bought from the private owner in town?
I don't know exactly what truck it is, but I know it was a used GMC 6-wheel dump.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to commit to saying that he would buy anything specific because it kind of depends on how much money he has and what breaks between now and the time the money shows up in the account to be used. So, and of the 200,000 that he requested, we budgeted 150. Drainage. Drainage is apparently a mess. Priority sites are Wapping, Rockville, Barber Hill, and Bridle Path. They have to be finished before road work can be done. So in some of these places he wants to do road work, but he can't until he gets the drainage done, so there's a balance to be done there. Not included in this price are the easements and the legal work that needs to be done for those easements. Just for reference, Wells, Trombley, and Scantic ran about $175,000. But there are numerous drainage issues across town.
And they keep popping up.
And they keep popping up. So $75,000 that we've asked for is clearly not enough to fix what we need to fix, but it's at least progress in keeping the project moving forward.
Does the city grade cover that type of work? Because I know
LoSiP does.
I know when these,
What would we call it, covering it?
Select did Project Hill.
They did drainage retention walls. They didn't do the road surface itself. They actually did.
Retention walls.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what they were doing in Prospect
All right.
Hill.
Maybe it doesn't, okay. I'm sorry.
No problem. Questions are good. The next one is the GIS system. So we have a number of mandated tasks that we need to do that we keep kicking the can down the road. The next 2 are estimated to cost about $70,000. We're looking for 25 in this budget. The 2 that are most priority are to locate and map all the storm drainage systems and to map the location of every street sign. Both of those are mandated, and somebody's probably going to come knocking on our door eventually if we don't start getting them done, because my understanding is they're already past due. The funds that he's asking for won't cover any contracting work, so everything's being done by internal personnel and a tablet. They are being efficient. The assessor's office, the state reval, they estimate the overall cost, and then we just break it up over 5 years to get enough money to cover the reval when it comes due. There is about 78,000 in CNR when we met. I don't know if that's still true.
Yes, it is.
So that reduces the request to only the amount that they expect to need to reach the next evaluation. So there's really not a lot of wiggle room in there with that 20,000 that they're looking for, or that we recommended. Vehicle replacement program for the town vehicles. Again, covers all the town departments, senior center buses. We try to do continuous small amounts of funding so that when a grant comes up that we need to have matching funds for, we have something in the bank with which to match. And we're able to take advantage of those grants when they come through.
Those are typically 10 or 20% town side versus the rest against the
A
grant.
big chunk of it is the
I
grant,
think it was
yeah.
5416 on Vandy's bid.
Yeah, so what is that? That's, so we pay 20% of that. A little more, 25%.
They're looking next at a 20-passenger bus and a car for small trips, for when they only need to take 1 or 2 people out, so that they don't have to take the full bus out. So that is the total of the annual projects, and the recommended amount for that was $1,122,000 rounded. And then we get into the not perpetual, but not necessarily one time. Starts with bunker gear. There's NFPA standards, require gear to be replaced at least every 10 years. So the $45,000 that they are requesting will cover the turnout coats, the bunker pants and hoods for 15 personnel at about $3,000 each. They're going to pull out of their budget the boots, the helmets, and the gloves, which are approximately $900 per person. And then we'd need to cover, we'd need to fund for 3 years in order to cover all of the sets that need to be replaced.
So basically, that number's gonna come back in the next 2
Yes,
years.
that's one of the, not perpetual, but not one time either.
And then once it comes back the next 2 years and then goes away, how long does it go away for?
Well, it's a 10-year standard, it looks like.
7 years.
So it'll go away for 7 years and then be back on the list.
Just like you did with the cruisers and doing 2.5 a year. I mean, we should
We
just
might continue that, yeah.
budget a small amount so it
My
doesn't
thought
stay so
would be
much.
that once we get through with these 3 years is that we then put it on like an even keel and move it up to the top of that list in the annual project so that it's there when we need it. Of course, that all depends on what happens with the fire departments and district funding and all that stuff, so that could change. The police vehicle computers, we think we did half of this last year. The current laptops were over 10 years old. This covers the remaining units that need to be replaced. The new ones are a tablet design with a removable keyboard, allows the officer to take that out of his vehicle with him when he's on the call, do a lot of his entry as he's working with people, saves him time when he gets back to his vehicle, not having to fill out all kinds of paperwork.
These have been ordered. They're ordered in here.
Well, the first half came in, and
This year.
we did, yes.
We did-
So
We funded half of it last year out of CIP.
I thought there was like a whole big thing about how we couldn't possibly order half at a time. They had to all be installed all at once or nobody would be able to talk to each other.
No,
Not that I know of.
I don't remember hearing that at
That
all.
was the argument that was made in terms of using Entree.
Where'd they get the rest of their money?
I don't know.
I only know of half being purchased.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
And when they came before us, they weren't, that's what they were looking for, was to buy out the second half, outfit the rest of the vehicles. Also allows him to have much more ready access to data as he's working with somebody, and being able to look things up.
Appropriation. Why does it ring a bell that that was an added appropriation thing?
computers for the police
It may have
department.
been, they may have gotten it as a supplement. I honestly don't remember if it
remember
got
that.
approved
I
don't
last
think
time
so.
or if
We
it
have
came.
not done any supplemental appropriations this year?
No, not this year.
Not
Oh,
even-
no.
In the
Last
past.
year, we did computers for the school.
You might be
I know,
thinking
I know we did for the
school
schools,
No,
but
you're
it's,
talking about the stuff that was done in May last year of spend down of capital. It could have been part of that because remember, we asked for 1.5 million last year and it was cut to 900.
okay.
Yeah.
So basically everything on that cut list, but that's
Yep.
still
Oh,
going
that's
in the
right.
first
Yep.
half of it.
Yep, that's right,
Right,
that's
and
right.
actually,
I can't remember whether it was
they
actual
were cut
CIP or
off of that
those,
list.
yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, so I
So
think it
in
was
May,
done
we
with
gave
the
them the-
But I know they got the
last
first
year
half.
For the first half.
Right.
I can't remember, yeah, it may very well have been
So
the
that's how they got
supplemental.
the first half then.
So they still only have the first half.
They still only have the first half that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So then this number could really be cut in half again.
No, that is
No.
the half.
That is the
That's
half.
The number on here
Total
is half.
46, I think, and change.
Yeah, the total was about $50,000, $49,985.
So if they got one
And
half.
it was, well, it was an odd number, I think it was 13, so they
So
got
if they got one
7,
half
and now
in
they're looking
already,
for the
then you
other
only need
6.
another half, so this would be the last year.
Yes,
That'll be the last time.
This would be the last year.
yes.
Okay, so
Until
make sure I
another
understand.
10
Until,
years.
again, like other things, until the next 10-year
Yeah.
mark rolls around and they're all dead and dying. Because these days, too, technology just dies a lot faster than it used to.
Right. it's
So
outdated
whether
after
they were to
you get it
last
in.
another
Yeah.
10-plus years, I think that's optimistic,
But
but
actually, the tough books are very durable.
they are durable, but the software is the problem, because what happens is the operating systems don't keep up and the software doesn't keep up.
You
And then
almost
you end up have to upgrade in order to get the upgraded operating system to be able to run your current software.
You're almost better off putting the money aside on a yearly basis rather than putting it aside for the last 3 years of that 10 years.
Again, there's a lot of
If we
things
could do
we
that
can move
with-
to the top of the
Yeah.
list. Yeah,
Well, our problem is we don't put enough even to cover the annual things anyhow.
right.
We're only budgeting about 900,000 and the ask for just the top things, not counting the bunker gear and the computers and stuff, is 1.2 million almost.
Right,
So
so
we're
we're,
not funding what we need to be funding in capital in general.
and that's a historical
Yeah,
problem.
we haven't as long.
It hasn't, as long as I've been on this board, we have not.
It's been about 11 years.
It's been that way since I've been around town.
Yeah.
I've been around town for a lot of years.
Before I was on the board, I remember hearing the same
Yeah,
thing,
the same
yes.
thing, yeah. It's like
And watching at budget meetings as it got cut,
25 years
yeah.
later, it's the
Yeah.
same concern.
So next page, item 12, is the DPW facility equipment. This is equipment that they use in the service garage and for maintenance of town facilities. Dig you out some details if you have questions. I think I have some other notes, but
I think this year they're buying a forklift.
they were talking about that, yep. The dog pound is still on the list. This would replace, the 62,000 is estimated, is an estimate, obviously. The intent is for that to replace all the kennels inside and out. The inspector's priority is the kennel gates and the inside floor, but the whole place needs work. The facility is grandfathered, as we all know, but we need to show the inspector that we are making some progress somewhere. Middle school parking. So currently, people are parking on the lawn areas daily. This would add 39 spaces, and the price estimate was updated in 2019, so it's probably reasonably close. And that would be, as you're facing the middle school, this would be the area to the right of the school that they would be using for additional parking. Certainly, once the snow, we've been good this winter, I'm sure everybody's still parking on the lawn, but once the snow flies and it's piled all over, parking becomes a real hazard in the wintertime.
What's driving the demand for additional parking?
Staff that goes from school to school to school.
That makes sense.
Well,
Thank
that's
you.
part of it. That's part of it. Part of it is,
Paraprofessionals. Students that have one-on-ones.
Mhm.
All I know is a nightmare in the morning.
At the middle school?
At all the schools are a nightmare.
I always found the middle school to flow fairly well through the little U they have there, then drop, next, drop, next.
Stand out here in the morning when you're
This is
trying to
crazy.
get in. It's absolutely ridiculous. You can't even get into the 2 available handicap spots because they block it off. So if you're handicapped, you're shit out of luck, which is problematic for a lot of the grandparents that drop off. And when it was questioned, we were told to get in the back of the line of the buses and drop the child off, which makes the kid stand out like a Thor's thumb. So I don't know how we fix that.
Yeah, there wasn't much room to add more parking. We added what we could add. You know, the town added what they could add, but. High school, this has been on here for a long time. The carpet's 25 plus years old.
It was the old office there.
Yeah.
That was much more than 25 years ago.
I was gonna say, it has said 25 plus for as many years as it's been on the list, and it's been on the list
That's the
since I've been
business
on
one,
CIP, yeah.
Business.
Yeah.
It's good carpet, I don't see why we should replace it.
Yeah.
It's holding up fine. There's no
You
way.
find out what the manufacturer was and use the same.
Yeah, it's true, they make it anymore, is the problem. You're never gonna get carpet.
It's probably
that
lined
lasts
with
that long.
asbestos.
Especially.
I don't think carpet is.
Oh, the glue.
Probably the glue.
Don't
They
even go
probably
there.
started using the carpet so they didn't have to take up the asbestos back then.
Yeah. The next one is the Parks and Rec. So they had a number of individual projects that they were looking at, and then they also wanted to look at doing a study to develop a master plan. And CIP looked at all of it and decided that the best thing to do would be to go forward with the master plan first and understand what fits, what works, what's the best way to move forward. That they would develop a plan that covers, they will inventory all the facilities, determine the needs, the cost, and the feasibility of improvements. All of this excludes the Covert property. It includes having community meetings, including the town sports leagues, to understand what the town would like. Identify potential funding sources for us as well, and assess the usage of the different areas. We see this as a group, we saw this as an essential first step before funding any other park repairs or improvements. We just think we should figure out what we need. There's no sense trying to fix old playgrounds if they're not going to be there anymore, or fix old equipment that could be replaced in a master plan. It just seemed a smarter, more efficient way to go.
Makes a ton of sense.
And then there's sidewalks. Been asking for sidewalks for a long time at different places. This one is to provide grant matching funds to allow sidewalks up Reservoir and down Depot. The Depot sidewalks from Mill Pond down are deteriorating. They're kind of a hazard to walk on. They're a mess. They're all falling apart and chunks are coming out of them everywhere. So that's a priority for Public Works to get that cleaned up, so at least it's what's there is safe, and then they would like to add through the up and down Reservoir and Depot to come through, I think, like to match up to where Perry Lane comes through, and make so that there'd be a nice loop of sidewalks there.
They put that in their budget.
That's what I was just looking up.
They put that, yeah.
Yes.
They put from Depot Street to
I was gonna say, they
Perry,
did do a big chunk this year.
Depot Street to Perry Lane, back down, almost like.
They're doing the ring.
The ring, yeah.
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 Well, and like I said, that was the first priority for them, so they also know they're very far down in our list in terms of CIP.
Well, is the request in this NCIP for installation of, or maintenance of, or replacement
Well,
of? Because there isn't on Reservoir.
It is not specific for that. It is to do what needs to be done for sidewalks, whether that's, whatever is the priority at the time. If Depot hasn't been replaced, my guess is Depot is going to be the priority to replace what's a safety hazard now. But that's really their call to make once we give them sidewalk money.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're not gonna give them the sidewalk.
Construct sidewalks on Depot Street from Merlot to Mill Pond Village, from Mill Pond Village to Perry Lane, from Park Hill to East Windsor Park, on Old Ellington Road from Windsor Road to Brook Elementary School, and from East Windsor Park to Perry Lane.
That's all really good stuff.
Yeah.
We should have that.
Yeah.
And, I'm gonna guess that he knows how far down this list he is and how much money CIP gets.
It's not even addressing Warehouse Point, there's a lot of repair that needs to be done there that's perennially not on the list.
Yeah. There's a lot of sidewalks all over town, and that was clear. Again, it's one of those things that we could fund annually and play catch-up for a number of years, before we even start building new stuff.
I'm not saying it's a good or a bad idea, I just want to make sure that as a board, we understand there's two different funding sources, because I'm sure our guys are going to find it, you know?
And the last one in the recommended funding is tree maintenance. So we started talking about this, it actually came up, Melissa brought it up as a Parks and Rec expenditure and request. And then as we talked about it more with Lenny and Melissa, we realized that there's trees, not just in the parks, that need dealing with, but all over. And they are becoming a hazard in that, if something goes down on somebody's house, we're going to be liable. I can tell you about the Thanksgiving that wasn't at my house this year when the power went out, because a tree went over down on Depot. I know that isn't the only accident or tree accident in our town this year, so they would like to start taking care of the most hazardous of the trees and getting things down and limbed as appropriate to prevent some of that from happening. So the total request comes to just shy of $1.5 million, $1,485,310.
Kathy, I can't get the math to work on the subtotal for the 21, the project request FY21. It's not adding down, so I haven't been able to quite figure out where.
Nope.
But
I do it in Excel, so I can double check my formula here.
I'm coming up with 402,330 instead of 897,845, and I think that's going to roll into your total combined.
It would. Let me see if I can check the formula. I beat this thing 4 ways from Sunday, but yeah, it starts at row 18 and ends at row 31, so it should have everything in it. It is summing. Let me just double check numbers.
The difference should be
20, 62, 85, 560, 34, 33, 7, 30. And 30. It should. It should add up to the 363.
Well, your differences are the 400,000 on project 3, the 50,000 on project 5, the 19,000 on project 15, and the 20,000 on project 18, right?
All right, wait, let me make sure I'm looking at which column are you adding up, the blue column?
No, well, the blue column I think adds, but it's the project request FY21 that seems,
right.
it's too high. So therefore you're
18 to 31 there. This one is 7 to 15. Well, the formulas seem to be right, so I'd have to look at it while I'm not hanging you guys up. 32 and 16, those are the right cells.
You want somebody to call off the numbers to you?
well, just in theory though.
There's a request for, from the subtotal for all, or
So maybe, yeah, I was gonna say, so.
or was it the first half or the bottom half?
So projects 1 to 9 are in that first subtotal.
Yep.
And looking at the formulas, they are looking at those same columns and those same numbers.
Yep, so the variance on the bottom should be 450, it's 449 and change, so it's up a little bit. And then the second column, the difference between, on the page, with the subtotal after number 18. So unless I'm missing something, the difference between the request and the recommend is 39,000, right? Because you've only taken down 15 and 18. But your variance is showing 500,000 or something like that. I'm doing the math really quick. So it
Yeah, the
just,
897 is too high of a number.
yeah, way too high.
When you add the other.
Oh, all right, you know why? I'm sorry, because I pulled the numbers from here, but there's some projects that didn't get funded that aren't in, you're right.
In that total.
Yeah, they're in that total and they're not in
They're on the
that.
back sheet.
Right, so they're actually on the back sheet. Sorry.
And the $495,000 which is missing is the
Yep.
back sheet.
It's the 495 is on the last sheet. The project's not recommended for funding.
5679 is probably what Barb's
You
getting the
just broke it
difference.
out differently.
Yes.
right?
No, it's okay.
So they're included, they would be included in that.
Got it.
That's why, my bad.
No, not at all.
I cut and pasted. Sorry.
You know what's being counted.
And what didn't you fund?
Sorry, Parks and Rec.
What did you not fund?
The last page.
Well, before we get to what we didn't fund, can we get to the next page, which is the bonding projects?
Which we also did fund.
Which we also didn't fund.
Oh, I just assumed the first, no money in it was you didn't fund it at all.
Yeah, so it says project recommended for bonding at the top. First one is the Broadbrook fire truck replacement. That's been on here for a couple years already. I'm sure you've all heard the problems with the truck, so I don't need to go back through the list, but it's a double frame starting to separate. There's only 2 locations that they can go to get it diagnosed. It's now the second truck out, it used to be their first. It's used for mutual aid. It's costing them $20,000 to $25,000 a year in maintenance. They're trying to keep it alive until a new truck becomes available. Their original plan was to ask for the $1 million over a period of 5 years, but they didn't get any money last year. We had put $100,000 in last year as a way to kind of start the fund, but it got cut when the final dollars came in. And we recognize that this is probably more appropriately a bonding issue anyway. The Broadbrook gym ceiling also, this has asbestos abatement associated with it. Roger has rechecked that estimate, so he gave us an updated number for that project. We're going to have to do environmental monitoring, engineering, and so the actual, I think, the asbestos abatement estimate, he got renewed. He did not renew all of the information for the monitoring, engineering, and materials. Those he estimated. He's got an estimate that's a number of years old, so he increased that by a percentage to try to get this estimate more in line with what it probably is today, because this has been on the list again for a really long time. And going back to that, just to state, and this is something that's been a consistent problem for all of the people that bring us projects, because we don't actually end up funding things, it becomes very difficult to get vendors to give detailed cost estimates for things.
You can't get the spec book until you have the money to pay for it. You can't pay for it until you have the spec book. How do you get into the batter's box?
Exactly. It's a problem. So they give us the best estimates they can. Sometimes it's based off old data, sometimes it's based off of their own knowledge. They do some research and try to come up with similar projects, whatever. They have all kinds of ways for trying to come up with an estimated cost, but it's an estimated cost. The high school roof replacement, not much different than the middle school roof replacement that needed to be done. It's definitely showing blistering and seam separation, and that's going to become leaks. And then we're going to find ourselves in the same place we were with the middle school, having to replace decking and other things underneath because of water damage. So this estimate is from 2017. So if we were actually going to go bond, we would want to update that.
How much of that would be eligible for state reimbursement, and then how does that work?
So the school gets state reimbursement, and I believe the middle school, or the high school roof would certainly come under that. I don't, the rules change, but last I knew, we were at about 60% or high 50%,
42.
56 or something.
So where does that reimbursement money go? Back into the general fund?
No.
So basically what happens is we have to pay for it up front, and then it comes back to pay for our bonding.
So what we do right now, we borrow, short-term borrow, the whole project. So we started with the whole 2.7 million for the middle school roof, then we went to 1.8, then we went to, I don't know, 1.5. And then when I actually bonded for it, I only bonded the 1.1 million we actually needed.
I forgot about that.
But I'll tell you, that is the wrong way to do it. It is very costly. We spent hundreds of
Every one of
thousands
those
of
is
dollars
refi. Yep.
to borrow short-term and do ratings and stuff like that on that stuff. What we really need to do is figure out a way to fund it out of our general fund as a borrow, and then pay it back when the state pays it back to us. Versus short-term borrowing, we know that only, say they're gonna pay 57% of it, we know that only 43% of that is gonna be our share. We should not have to borrow the entire amount for the project.
Is the state obligated to reimburse? I mean, could they be?
Once they approve,
They're good at that.
once they approve the project for reimbursement, they're pretty good about.
School projects they don't mess with generally.
And it starts really
And you'll get
early
the
in process.
improvement up front before you start work.
Yeah, you know before you actually, you have to have approval and you have to have the bonding in place before you can get it's kind of the chicken and the egg story.
Yeah.
Once you get that approval, you have to know that you can bond the difference. And, but we definitely, in the situation we are with our fund balance, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to pay it out of the general fund and then get it back when it comes back from the state. We should not be borrowing the way we're borrowing and accruing those kind of costs. It just makes all the projects much more expensive than they need to be.
So the next one down was other roof replacements, DPW, Broadbrook, Senior Center, Broadbrook Fire Department, I should say, Senior Center. DPW roof has multiple patches, the chimney's in disrepair. Replacement is they're looking at a standing seam metal roof that's expected to last well beyond the 40-year life estimate as the replacement for the DPW roof. The Fire Department Senior Center roof has got fastening heads putting pressure on the underside of the membrane, posts rubbing against membranes, creating a tear, needing reinforcement before winter, so hopefully they got that done. That was November, we were talking about that, so hope they did that. But there's many patches, we saw pictures, it's not pretty, they're in your books, I'm sure. Again, a standing seam metal roof is recommended for that as well. And then the last thing is AC for the gym, and as far as the school goes, we don't, it's not really a whole lot of skin off of our back one way or the other, but it would certainly help with cooling areas when the weather gets really hot. A number of kids there's a lot more kids with more breathing issues, asthma issues, allergy issues. We need places to put them on those days for at least short respites, so it would help us. But the main reason for asking for it is also because it is supposed to be our emergency shelter. And there's no air conditioning in there if we need a cooling center. So,
No generator either, but.
Yeah, you can't run the air conditioner as a shelter anyway.
if there's, well, it depends on what kind of shelter you're talking
given
about.
up on
As a
that
cooling
request.
center, you could. I don't know, my husband's still working on that one, we'll see. He has some ideas.
That was a wee bit of bad news for everybody who had that plan, that the school is where we would go. And, oh, no,
Well,
not so
as
much.
long as there's power, you can still use it as a cooling center or a warming center. Certainly if there's no power on Route 5, you're going to be screwed.
We've been talking about that generator there since 2011, too.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound like it's feasible from what Joe has said. The way the school was built and then added onto, it left half. So like heat is on one side of the building and power like lights is on the other side. And the cooking is one of them, but, so you can only have parts of it.
And the shower
No matter
facilities
what
don't
you do
work
it.
either.
Right.
No, the showers all need fixing.
Roger said he wasn't doing it,
Wasn't doing,
fixing them.
Right now, no, they don't get used.
No, I think they're storage.
Yeah.
Right now, they're not used at all. Because they're just falling apart, so they're not being used. So the last page is the things that are not recommended. A few Parks and Recs projects, as we talked about, we decided to hold off on that pending the outcome of the master plan, so we pushed those off. Conservation Commission came to us for $250,000 to replenish their open space fund. Given the priority needs of the other things, we also pushed that one to the bottom.
So he said tonight, you correct me if I'm wrong, he wants it to be brought up to 250, he's not asking for 250.
That's not-
That's not what was presented to CIP at the
Right, that's
time.
not what's in the book that I saw.
And at the
So-
time that he talked to us, there was 55,000 in there. I think he said 35-ish tonight when he talked to you guys.
He also said that he was asking for 50,000, which was,
Yeah.
I mean, we started out trying to give him something, trying to give him, again, something to start to build on. But when we looked at the numbers, we were like, okay, we're already way beyond what we are gonna get. So it's senseless to put it in here as a recommended item for this year, given the priority of the other things.
And I'll just share my wisdom in that. What you really need to do is a project to come forward, and that's a great fund balance appropriation. You already know that there's a piece of property that's available, the state's gonna give us a grant match. We go for an appropriation, we get the grant match, and it's done. It doesn't necessarily have to sit there in a fund for open space.
And then the
We
last
did
one.
share that with him.
Yes, we did. That was shared with him. The last one is exterior lighting, doing upgrades to LED lighting throughout town. When he pushed that one off, said that was a low priority given all the other things that are really needed, so we kicked that one to the bottom of the list. A couple things we addressed in the letter that we hope you guys will think about. So obviously, there's a number of things that can't be accommodated within the funding that are typically available, and we've identified those for bonding. We're hoping that while we have ample capacity, and I'm sure Amy can fill this in much better, but while we have ample capacity for bonding, the 2% budget cap limits our ability to do it. So based on the cost of obtaining a bond, the minimum bond should be somewhere around $5 million and cover lots of projects. But because the debt service is limited by the 2% cap, it won't make sense until at least FY26. So all of those projects that we're recommending for bonding, based on the current 2% cap, we won't be able to look at until FY26. So we would like to suggest that you consider separating the CIP and debt service budgets from the 2% cap. Realize that that's undoubtedly a lot harder to do than a simple statement, and it would probably require a charter change, which I know you're recommending.
they're working. They had their first meeting.
We already have 5 questions and we can't do a 6th, sorry.
So,
One of the questions is just going to be a long one.
so that's one of the things that we would hope,
Three-part question.
that's one of the things that we would hope they would look at, is trying to do that. Because I think it allows important flexibility for the town to be able to do what it needs to do when it needs to do it, instead of finding itself, short a fire truck or with a roof that's, in such disrepair that it ends up costing twice as much, or you have to vacate parts of a building because it's leaking. There's just too many things that can go wrong when you can't get that work done.
So their charge included taking a wholesale look at Section 8 of the charter, in total. And one of the things that is to be hopefully discussed is separating CIP and debt from the 2% rule, if the 2% rule remains unchanged in that. So
Well, whatever
they
the
have,
rule
they
is,
have a
if it
menu of
limits
stuff
us,
to
yeah.
look at.
And
The
that's
other
how
thing-
the state does it.
Yeah.
The spending cap for the state that requires us to stay under 2.5 excludes both debt service and capital, along with one-time things or litigation things, so there's kind of a laundry list of what it excludes. But just debt and capital would be huge if you could get them out from underneath that 2%.
Or whatever the cap may be at the time. The other thing I would selfishly like to request is that by the time we get the capital requests in, and I don't want to make people send those in any earlier, because I think it's already really early for them to be trying to project that far out. By the time those come in and we can start having meetings, December 1st comes up, or November 1st? I think we're supposed to have it to you by November 1st.
Yeah, November.
It's a very, very tight time frame to try to get everybody in, considering that it's, you know, it's leading up to the holidays and school starting, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. If we could scrunch that timeline out a little bit and move that, because that due date is technically laid out in the charter. So it would be nice to have that, a little bit more breathing room in there.
That I hadn't thought about, so they
So I should go to a charter meeting and request it.
They're having a public hearing on March.
Is that a long question?
They have one, 4th?
I think it's
Whatever that Tuesday is.
Okay, I didn't know they had one planned.
Yeah,
Okay.
it hasn't been noticed yet, but that's when it's going to be, so.
March 3rd.
It's whatever that Tuesday is.
March 3rd.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll-
7 p.m.
Is it here?
7 p.m. charter.
Did you say 3 p.m.?
No, I said 7 p.m.
Oh, 7 p.m.
You guys have anything to add?
I think it's March 4th.
Yeah, moral support, that's
They're here to help fill
You've done
in
a great
anything I
job.
forget. Anything I forget, though, they're always.
They're here to help plug in some numbers when we need it.
I'll share that it's a fantastic process. The spreadsheet that they do takes everybody's favorite things out of it, because everybody in the group has to vote on a number through 1 through 5 on this, or, you know, 1 through 10 on this. So it becomes a group consensus list by the time it makes it to you guys. And it's a great process. Best one I've ever been involved in.
Thanks. That's cool.
Then we're supposed to disregard it, right, and just do our own thing?
Yeah. Well, that's how it's been the last couple of years, so sure, you can continue the tradition.
Now, what's great about that, though, is it can apply to a lot of other things, too. I could see in some instances where Board of Finance may be able to find a use for something like that.
Yeah, I will say, we lay them all out, we rate them under a number of different categories, and we do that as a group, like, you know, somebody throw in a number, and then we start there, and up and down until we come up with a consensus of a number, and then mathematically, those numbers give us a priority. Which isn't to say that we always look solely at the priority when we put together the project list to come, because we understand that, you know, things like the nice things, like the Parks and Rec things, would never happen at all, ever. Sidewalks would never happen. There are certain things that will never bubble to the top of the priority list. So we try to find a way to funnel some money even to the projects that are lower on the list, but it certainly helps us put everything in perspective in terms of what's the most important things in town.
I did have one question. There, isn't the police department returning a few cars to the town?
3.
3?
You can get a charger back.
And that's where the town property cars come from.
Yeah.
A lot of times he takes them and repurposes them, or he sells them if they're not something that we can really use. Some of them are past when they should be used.
Some of them,
This year, you may get one this year that could be
actually usable.
Because, you know, I noticed they had this, you know, small car for taking 1 or 2 people to.
Exactly.
You know, that
And
could
that's
easily
maybe
fill that,
that's-
especially if they're only using it once a week maybe.
Except I think
And
that
that's a
small
perfect
car
way you
that
can
they
plug
need
that
is a
hole.
minivan, because you gotta remember, these are senior, elderly.
Who
Yeah, they can't get in and out of,
So
like,
they're
small,
not
small.
gonna, they're
They have
not
mobility
gonna crawl
issues.
down into a Taurus or
Yeah.
something that's sitting on the ground.
Right.
Yeah, but if it's one of our SUVs,
Yep, and, well, I mean, I don't know how many of our SUVs have been
I
recycled
gotta
through
look and
yet.
see, I don't know if you
But
have.
the town car here is obviously a sedan.
I think you got a Crown Vic, you got the Charger,
Yeah.
and a Taurus.
Yeah,
So you
probably
got
none of
nothing-
which will accommodate
nothing
somebody with
useful.
mobility issues, yeah.
And like a lot of that money, that town property money is really tied to grant match. Because apparently a few years ago, we were able to get a grant and couldn't come up with a match.
Yeah.
So
we lost it.
We weren't able to get
Yep.
the replacement vehicle.
Uh,
So that's really what that account's really for.
And the other problem is that the more that happens, the less likely you are to be awarded a grant.
Right.
You gotta be careful that
Okay.
you don't
You
put
really
yourself
shouldn't
in
be
a
applying
spot.
for
Yeah,
things
they
until you know
kinda
what it is.
admonish
I think there was a reason that they thought they could, and then something, I don't remember. It's been a while now since that particular one fell apart. but they've been more cautious about that since.
Well, thank you guys for the hard work you put into this.
Certainly, if you
A lot of
guys have,
information there.
yeah, if you guys have any other questions, as you go through it, I'm happy to try to answer them or reach out to the department heads for anything I can't come up with off the top of my head.
How long does your quote information stay fresh?
I mean, you know the economy, how long do you think it stays fresh? I mean,
So asked a different way, how often do you update the quote information on projects that have been there for a couple of years?
we don't.
Or the
They do.
department, how
Yeah.
often you
So
ask
it
for that to be
depends on,
updated?
honestly, we don't specify. Bring us your information, and, you know, like the things that they know are significantly out of date, they let us know. This is a really old quote, but if they don't see it coming near the top of the list, they're not going out. They're not going out.
That
So
makes sense.
so a lot of it depends on the priority of the project itself.
Okay. Thanks to you both.
Okay? Well,
Those guys do that.
yeah.
Yeah, good job, guys. Next is budgets that I have some control over. So the first one is the Board of Selectmen's budget. There's not much new in there. There are a couple of things. Central office supplies, I'm just upping by $1,000 just to adjust for costs of things, but that's mostly a status quo line. Community outreach, that historically was a $10,000 line and was brought down when Bob started using it for things other than what it may have been designed for. So I'm asking to put that back. That would also cover like the costs of the town's portion of the community newsletter if it's not ad supported. But I think that there is a need for us to invest some effort financially as well into making sure that we're trying to be as communicative with as many people as possible. And then the other thing I'd draw your attention to is Marshall supplies. That is all continuing education stuff that was requested by the fire marshal. That line is typically almost not funded at all. But he did point out that there are some ongoing continuing ed stuff that would benefit his department or his ability to perform his function. So he sent it to me, and so I included it. Any questions? Activities and fees. This is under my my office, but it really is self-supporting for the most part. CCM is an annual cost. We talked about the cemetery. Community health is a per capita assessment. CROG is a fixed rate. I think that's also a per capita assessment. I did include the $1,000 membership funding for the Connecticut Main Street Center. Patrick McMahon came and gave us that presentation at our last meeting. As I talked to folks who are in this space, there is an absolute need for us to spend some money in order to generate the type of economic development return that we are hoping to get to. What's that?
I should agree. I looked at that information.
Yeah, it's crazy cheap, and to not do it, I think is great. It's just the Four-Town Fair, that's going up at the request of the fair directors, and there was a meeting last week with the towns of Enfield, Ellington, and East Windsor to talk about that and why they're trying to do it. They're trying to do an addition onto the property in order for them to be able to host other types of events. I want to say it's a goat barn that they're trying to do. Am I right?
Yep.
And they're going to be applying for a farm viability grant through the Department of Agriculture. In order to do that, they need a 40% match to the state's 60%. So that is what that represents. The other thing that they're struggling with a bit, the town of Somers has not participated at all in supporting the Four-Town Fair for apparently a number of years. And in fact, they're actually going the other direction. They're costing the fair money. Since they went to a full-time fire department, they have started to no longer waive some of the fire marshal fees that the fair had enjoyed previously. So it's now costing the fair money to locate in South Windsor or in Somers. So at any rate, they asked for towns to.
So does any of the other towns have a spot we can have a fair?
That
New open space.
that has come up.
Nobody's got all those buildings in space, you know?
That has come up, but they're a private organization, so
I'm thinking the Italian festival in Enfield.
they do that on the green.
No, the.
Isn't Mount Carmel on the town green?
No.
No, where is that?
It's like off it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're a private organization, they're considering those
You're not
things.
gonna get a horse show in there, though.
No,
400 head of cattle.
in Thompsonville. Other changes. Metro Hartford Alliance is a population assessment again. North Central Health District that's a per capita assessment. The network has been flat for a number of years. The probate court is also, that's an assessment. We talked about AHRC.
Oh, the Historical Society didn't want any money.
Oh, that's right, but they're not in there.
Yeah, they are. Right below probate.
No, I took them out.
Well, I know, but that's a change.
It's a change in the right direction. They actually asked, because they have an anonymous benefactor and they enjoy doing things in the nonprofit space versus having to overlay into the government space, they actually asked not to be funded. The change here really is only represented by a substantial boost in the Cemetery Association, but my recommendation reduces that $25,000 increase by $20,000. So all told, that becomes a $7,000 increase over what it has been in the past.
Can I backtrack a little bit and
Yeah.
ask a question?
Yep.
Since Broadbrook Fire is on the agenda tomorrow night, and if I have some questions in regards to the fire marshal, would tomorrow be a more appropriate time? Will Mr. Simpkins be joining them for their?
No, he doesn't work for them. He works for us. So
Okay.
I spoke with Charlie a little bit about that offline, and probably the best time to ask those types of questions would be during our actual formulation of what the Selectmen's recommendation to the Board of Finance are. So that,
Okay.
if we go according to my kind of idea in my head, I think is Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
So if you could just park those until then.
Will do.
Legal, I think in the same section.
Yeah, at the very end of it.
The general counsel line is going up by 10,000, and the labor relations line is going up by 10,000. Those, in one case, the town council cost represents just kind of getting everything back under one house in a way that makes some sense. And the labor relations cost is because of the large number of contracts that are currently outstanding and are likely to be in the new fiscal year. So we are for sure going to have to do DPW. We probably will have to do DPW labor. We probably will have to do police labor. We probably will have to do dispatch labor. And then there's a whole bunch of pension costs that are still lingering that are not going to be done before the start of the fiscal year. So this is always throwing a dart, but it's an approximate best guess on what I think we'll actually need to spend. And it also tracks, I think, just below what our historical spending has been. I think historically, between the two lines, we spend 300,000 and we're spending 280 here. I believe I'm correct.
I have those sheets for everybody, too.
Oh, good. You want to hand those out?
Sure.
And the revenue, too.
Yep.
Ethics.
I will give you guys an updated spreadsheet too for the back part of that letter.
Okay.
The total specs. Thank you, Bob.
Sorry, hey, I don't have a set for you. Those are your.
So happy when you do these things at 11 o'clock at night.
So you can do that. 'Cause that's all that there is. This is tomorrow. Can we get us into that? Yeah, I just don't have them with me. You don't need a set, you already have them.
Yes, I do.
I was gonna say, how did I end up with not enough sets, but I think I have enough. Uh-oh.
Ethics is
Thought I
back in
lost
tab
your
6.
seat. Yeah.
Not sure why I'm presenting this.
Thank you.
But, here it is.
Share it.
I once had somebody told me I couldn't be ethical because I work for Senate Democrat.
And I had to get it wrong. I don't know what I did with it.
So this is a standard $500 request that covers their recording secretary. The hope is that we don't need them to use it. And, well, I mean, we'll see. But they have a very, they have a good process where they make sure that before they move forward on anything, there's a lot of fire to back the smoke. So they're a good group of people. They don't meet unless they need to meet, and hopefully that won't be very often at all. Amy handed out the revenue sheet. This is an email that came into my office, I think one day last week, from CCM, and it kind of is an outline of what is in the governor's proposed budget for FY20, and it compares that to what's going on in the current, I'm sorry, in FY21 versus FY20. So not much change, which is a good starting point. Historically speaking, the governor's budget is, and this goes back to at least Governor Rowland. Historically speaking, in terms of municipal aid, the governor's budget is the bottom of what you can expect. Things typically only improve from there. The legislature as an institution is not particularly inclined to decrease municipal aid, so typically whoever occupies the governor's office is putting forward what the baseline will be. So that this represents flat funding from them gives us a starting point for what we can consider as that part of the budget process moves forward. That said, we really can't do a whole lot in terms of comparing expenditures and revenues without knowing what the Board of Ed number is too. Because otherwise, there's a big chunk of the math that's missing, and you just don't know.
And you guys do have a summary revenue sheet in tab 8. I put in everything other than tax revenue. And the governor's numbers will be a little different in education cost sharing, because last year I reduced it by what we thought might be the teacher's retirement contribution.
Which is off the table
And
this year.
I've been told that's off the table this year. So I can put in, so it will give us a little bit of a bump compared to the budget, but because I had put in flat, which was pretty close considering the change is $328. So, but that is in tab 8, everything other than tax revenue.
Hey Jay, can I throw one more thing in? I always forget this at budget time. You mentioned recording secretary.
Oh,
and
capital has one.
I know we have one, but I think we're usually short at least 1 or 2 meetings, and we end up taking the minutes ourselves, which we can do. We try to do it judiciously and pick the least minutes meeting for us to do. But it usually takes us 2 or 3, depending upon availability of staff, to do the presentations to us. And then we plan a couple nights to go through and rank things. We plan at least one night. It takes at least 2 meetings to rank them all and then decide on the priorities, what we want to put forth as a recommendation. And then we end up having another meeting after the budget passes to provide a recommendation for the final allocation. So we're usually up about 6 meetings, and I'm not sure that it covers that many. I think it maybe covers 4 or 5.
What's your per meeting cost?
I have no idea.
I'm thinking 125.
Yeah. So if you want to do 2 more or 1 more?
If I could have a total of 6 meetings, whatever it comes to, that would cover us.
That's what you have.
Really? Because I thought last year we were short.
125 times 6 is 750, right?
Right, I guess.
No,
No,
that's
wait.
5.
Oh, that's terrible math.
That's why I got 5.
I was told there wasn't going to be math.
We're on SNL, very nice.
Al's having a good day.
A lot of fresh air today.
I think it was the Hershey's Kisses.
If you do the math, then just 6 meetings would cover us.
So we just had a little sidebar here, and we've determined you do have funding for 6 meetings, so you must need a 7th. This is like the end of the movie Clue.
I don't know.
1 plus 2.
I think
plus
we
2 plus
usually manage to get it done in 6, but I know there was one year where, maybe it was because something carried over from the previous year, I don't know, but.
You upped it last year and forgot?
Well, part of it too is sometimes the last meeting is typically in June, so it would be part of this fiscal year, but maybe it got pushed to July one year.
Okay.
And maybe that's why we were short. So if there's 6, then we should be good.
Okay.
We can make 6 work.
On the revenue side, one of the things I draw your attention to is we have for 10 years or so, maybe not quite that long, budgeted collecting 98.5% of our tax revenue. We have, I think, every single year, not just exceeded that, but well exceeded that. Not to say that we shouldn't adjust that, but that's just we budget to not collect everything we do. And Patty had a couple of years where she was at 103% of what she was trying to do. I mean, it was just,
Last year, we didn't make current.
we did not. So,
No, because, and I'm sure you guys maybe not are aware of it, so basically, we had put things on our grand list
Oh, that's
were
why, the
not
grand list dropped.
taxable. Some exemption stuff had ended up on there, so there was about $600,000 of taxes we could not collect.
and that was the issue that impacted the fire district too.
Yes.
Yep.
So last year, we did not make our 98.5%, but.
Not because of
prior to
collections,
that, we
but because of,
hadn't.
that was a grand list error.
Right. So, but it hasn't been because of collections. But 98.5 is probably pretty accurate for like around, if you went around the area and asked people, I bet you 98.5 is probably pretty much what everybody's collecting or budgeting at.
So we are right now, for 1920, we're at 99.3%. Last year, Amy's right, and we were a full percentage point short of that, but that was because of the grand list evaluation. But we're at 99% now, 99.3% now. The other thing that is kind of a little bit unpredictable is the building permit fees. Those can be considerable. So if we were to get a significant development that were to occur in FY21, that could be an extra $1 million in revenue that we're not seeing, depending on what the size and scope of that is. And I think the casino, if that is ever to be, is supposed to be somewhere around a $2.5 or $3 million building permit. So, there's not a lot we can do about revenues other than Is there any public participation? Adam?
I'm good, thank you. I appreciate the personal reach out, though.
Hey, Jason, just a quick question. In your budget, did you do any salary increases for the first selectman position?
All unaffiliated positions are given a 2% increase. That is the norm across the board. So that's, unless there's a contract saying otherwise, Amy, then it's a flat 2%. So that's Lenny, me, my 2 people. I'm going around the horn to figure out who else is unaffiliated. Who else is unaffiliated?
I think Roger and Ed, but they both.
They have a different contract and they follow the PD contract anyway. But that's typical and that's the way.
I'm afraid they're all falling behind the national.
Lenny would agree with you.
Well, I'm being realistic, they're falling behind what other towns are paying, and the concern is at some point, are we gonna lose anybody because we're not keeping up with what they
I
can
guess
get
the
elsewhere?
good news is almost everybody is contracted here
Okay.
or unions. So the bulk of all your supervisors, tax collector, town clerk, all of them are through union contracts. So there really aren't a lot of people who are not contracted. We have a half a dozen, I think. That's
Yeah.
it.
We have, well, that's an aside. Any other comments or discussion? A motion would be in order to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second. Made and seconded at 7:41. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Hey, do you have the,
I found a,
department heads coming?
what's that?
Is that what they're doing?